I saw the shift in his eyes before I heard the words that changed everything. That moment, just a fraction of a second, cut through the noise like glass cracking in silence. I knew it was over before I even processed what had happened. Tyler's party was supposed to be like every other end-of-summer gathering. Just kids killing time before life started pulling us in opposite directions. College, jobs, responsibility. There were lights strung through the backyard trees, cheap speakers set up on folding tables, and bodies weaving through the space like it was all choreographed. The smell of beer and barbecue mixed with cut grass and heat. It was a night made to be forgotten, but not this one. Liam and I arrived together, as usual. That was just how it worked. We'd been inseparable since we were kids. He talked, I listened. He led, I followed. But it never felt like he dragged me along. It felt like I belonged beside him. Safe. He melted into the crowd with ease, throwing grins, clapping shoulders, calling out names. I hung near the fire pit for a while, then drifted to the back fence. It was there in the space between conversations that it happened. A voice behind me, familiar and not. Calm, careless. See that guy? Daniel? I used to talk to him. Online. He's gay. No build-up. No hesitation. Just truth dropped like a stone into still water. I didn't turn around. Didn't react. I felt my breath lock in my chest. It wasn't the word that got me. It was the tone. Indifferent. Like I was some fact people passed around when the music got low. And then I looked up. Liam was standing 10 feet away. He'd heard it. He hadn't been part of the conversation. Hadn't been looking for it. But he'd stopped, drink in hand, mid-step. His face wasn't angry. It wasn't disgusted. Just different. Like something cracked, and he didn't know what to do with the pieces. Our eyes met for half a heartbeat. He blinked. Then he turned and walked away. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just gone. And I stood there with the pieces he left behind. I don't remember much after that. I moved, I think. Walked around. Smiled at people. Laughed at jokes I didn't hear. My body on autopilot. Mind looping the same 3 sentences over and over. He's gay. He's gay. He's gay. I didn't even know who the guy was. I couldn't match the voice to a face. It didn't matter. The damage was done. I left early. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Especially not Liam. When I got home, I sat on my bed for hours just staring at my phone, willing it to buzz. To light up with his name. Anything. But it didn't. And when I woke up the next morning, the silence was still there. Liam didn't text. Didn't call. No memes. No you alive? Messages. Not even the usual Snapchat streak ping. For a friendship that lived on a constant stream of inside jokes and nothing messages, the absence was deafening. By late afternoon, I started pacing. My chest felt tight in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't heartbreak, not yet. It was the fear of what was coming, of how that one overheard truth had changed something I'd never dare to touch. I kept replaying the look on his face. Not horror, not hatred, just stunned, like someone had given him a puzzle with all the wrong pieces. And I hated that I understood. We never talked about it. Not once. In all our years of growing up together, sleepovers, road trips, all-nighters on Xbox, there were things we didn't say. I never told him. Never even came close. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I wasn't ready to watch everything fall apart. But now it had fallen without me saying a word. And somehow, that hurt more. Around 7 p.m., I walked to the park. It was a small space down the street from our neighborhood, mostly empty after sunset. I sat on the swings and watched the sky bleed from orange to blue, hoping the air might clear my head. It didn't. I heard footsteps before I saw him. The gravel gave him away. I didn't turn until I was sure. Liam. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, hood up even though the night was warm. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then quietly, is it true? I didn't ask what he meant. I couldn't. There was no point. I just nodded. His jaw tensed slightly. Since when? I looked away. Since always. I just never said it out loud. The silence that followed was long and strange and full. Finally, he exhaled. Why didn't you tell me? I was afraid. I said honestly. Not of you. Of what it might change. He looked at me then, not with anger, not even disappointment. Just confusion. And that, somehow, was worse. I don't care, he said, and for a second my heart lifted, until he added, I mean, I do, obviously. I don't know how I feel. Not about you, just about this. All of it. I get it. No, you don't, he snapped, then immediately pulled back. Sorry. I didn't mean that. It's just, this feels like something I should have known. How'd I not see it? I gave him a small, bitter smile. Because I got really good at hiding it. Especially from you. He sat on the swing next to mine, kicking at the gravel beneath his feet. I'm not mad, he said. Just surprised. I nodded. That was all I needed to hear. For now. But then he added something that made my breath catch. That guy, the one at the party. He sounded like he knew you. My stomach flipped. We used to talk. A while ago. Nothing ever happened. Liam nodded slowly, as if each word required effort to process. I don't care that you're gay, Dan, he said. I really don't. But I think I'm realizing there's a version of you I never met. And that's weird. I couldn't argue with that. He stood after a while, stretching, cracking his knuckles. I'm not going to ghost you, he said. I'm not going anywhere. I just need time to think. And then he walked off into the dark, leaving me under the stars, wondering if the version of me he never met would ever get the chance. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my phone on the pillow beside me, like a silent witness. Every few minutes I would glance at it, hoping it would light up with his name, hoping for anything. But the screen stayed dark. Hours passed, and the night dragged on with no comfort, just a kind of hollow quiet that filled my chest and refused to leave. I thought about messaging him, just one line, something light, maybe even a joke, but nothing I typed sounded right. Everything felt too heavy, or too desperate, or too afraid. So I typed and erased again and again, until the screen blurred and my eyes ached. Morning came, but it didn't feel like a new day. I moved through it like I was underwater, slow and disoriented. I didn't even know what I was supposed to feel. Hurt? Guilty? Angry? I kept asking myself why I felt like the one who had done something wrong. The secret was mine, and yes, I kept it, but I had my reasons. And still, I couldn't stop thinking about the look on his face when he heard the truth. Not disgust, not rage, just confusion and distance. I waited. Every hour, I waited. My phone stayed silent. No texts, no notifications. Liam didn't even open my story from the night before. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a statement. We'd never gone this long without talking. Even when we were mad at each other, even when we were busy, we found a way to stay connected. But now it felt like a wall had dropped between us, and I didn't know if it could be climbed. I tried to distract myself. I cleaned my room, made tea, watched videos I didn't absorb. I walked around the block more than once. But everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of him. Places we'd been together, things we'd laughed about, inside jokes only we understood. I couldn't escape him. I didn't want to. That was the worst part. I didn't want to move on. I just want to know if we were still okay. By late afternoon, I was exhausted from thinking. I sat outside on the back steps, staring at the fence, hoping somehow he'd appear. I thought about our last real conversation before the party. Something dumb about fast food and video games. It felt like a lifetime ago. How could everything change so quickly? How could someone go from knowing everything about you to not knowing how to speak to you at all? I nearly jumped when I heard the gate open. I turned, heart racing, and there he was. Liam, standing just inside the yard, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he said, "Can we talk?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He walked over and sat beside me. Not close, not distant, just there. The silence stretched between us. He looked straight ahead, eyes focused on nothing. I waited. I didn't want to rush him. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Finally, he spoke. "So it's true?" I nodded. He nodded too, like that settled something. But it didn't. Not really. "How long have you known?" he asked. I shrugged. "Since I was a kid." But I didn't fully understand it back then. He looked down at his shoes. "And you never told me." It wasn't an accusation, just a fact. I shook my head. I wanted to. So many times. But I didn't know how. "Because of me?" he asked. "Because you thought I'd be weird about it?" I hesitated. "Because I didn't want to lose you. You mean too much to me." That made him glance over. His expression softened for a second before hardening again. You should have said something. I know, I said. I should have. I just couldn't. Another long silence. The kind that says more than words ever could. I don't hate you, he said eventually. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Like, I feel like I missed something huge about you. And I don't know what that says about me. It doesn't say anything bad, I replied. I worked really hard to keep it hidden. It wasn't your fault. He exhaled, slow and unsteady. Were you ever going to tell me? I was waiting for the right moment, I said. But maybe there never was one. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. You ever think about what would have happened if I didn't hear that guy at the party? All the time, I answered. I've been thinking about it since that second. He looked at me again. I don't want to make this weird. Then don't, I said gently. It doesn't have to be. Another pause. Did you ever feel anything for me? I took a deep breath. Yes, but I never acted on it. I never would have. You're my best friend. That mattered more than anything else. He nodded slowly, digesting that. I don't know how to feel about that, he admitted. It's not like I'm mad, but it's complicated. I get it. He looked up at the sky, the early evening light painting shadows across his face. I don't want to lose you, Dan, but I need time. I'm not going anywhere, I said. Take all the time you need. He stood up, brushing off his jeans. For a moment, he just stood there. Then he said, "Thanks for being honest. Thanks for listening." He gave me a small nod and walked back toward the gate. I watched him go, unsure if we were better or worse than before. But at least we weren't silent anymore. And that was something. We hadn't spoken in 2 days. Not because we were avoiding each other exactly, but because something had shifted. After our last conversation, it was like we were both walking on a frozen lake, careful, unsure how deep the ice ran beneath our feet. I didn't want to push him. I didn't want to explain myself again or demand anything he wasn't ready to give. He had shown up. He had listened. That meant something, but it wasn't peace. It was waiting. It was just after sunset when he messaged me. Meet me at the park? That was all it said. No emojis. No explanations. Just 7 words. I put on my shoes and left without thinking twice. The air was cool and dry, the kind of evening that hinted at the changing season. The park was nearly empty, just a few scattered families finishing their walks. I spotted him before he saw me. He was sitting on one of the wooden benches, still, hands clasped in front of him, staring ahead like he was trying to see something far off. I walked over and sat beside him. Neither of us said anything at first. Then, after a while, he asked, "Do you remember that night after your sister's birthday, when we stayed out here until like 2 in the morning?" I nodded. We talked about time travel and argued about whether teleportation would ruin friendship. He smiled faintly. "You said if teleportation existed, we'd never be late for school. And you said teleportation would make people lazy," I added. He nodded again. "That night, you got real quiet after that." "I was thinking," I said. "I know," he replied. "I remember wondering what you were thinking about." We sat in silence again. I knew something was coming. He hadn't asked me to meet just to reminisce. Finally, he asked, "Did you ever look at me differently?" The question was quiet, but clear, and it landed like a soft blow. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He just wanted to know. I didn't lie. "Yes," I said. "Sometimes." He looked down at his shoes. What did that mean? It meant I cared. It meant sometimes I wish things were different, but it never meant I wanted to ruin what we had. He nodded slowly, still staring at the ground. "I figured," he said. "I think I always kind of wondered. There were moments when I thought maybe, but I didn't know how to ask. I felt my throat tighten, but I held my voice steady. I never acted on it," I said. "Not because I was scared, but because I respected you. I respected us." He looked over at me then, for the first time since I arrived. "I believe you." There was weight in that sentence. Trust, recognition, and something else I couldn't name. He leaned back against the bench and let out a breath. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, "about you, about me, about what this all means." And I asked. "And I don't know," he admitted. "That's the truth. I don't know what I feel. I know I care about you. That hasn't changed. I know I want you in my life. That's solid. But the rest? I'm still figuring that out." "That's okay," I said. He turned his head slightly. "You keep saying that." "Because it is," I said again. "You're allowed to be unsure. I didn't tell you so you'd give me an answer. I told you because I wanted to stop hiding. He was quiet for a while. Then he asked, have you ever thought about what it would be like if things were different? All the time, I said. And what did you picture? Sometimes nothing more than sitting beside you like this. Other times, maybe more, but always safe. Always you, still being you. He nodded, processing that. I've never thought about guys that way, he said. Not once. But after hearing it out loud, I started replaying things. Moments. Things you said. Things I said. And I wonder if maybe I missed something. You didn't miss anything, I said. You saw exactly what I wanted you to see. Yeah, but maybe didn't want to look too closely either, he said. Maybe I ignored it because it scared me. He went quiet again. I didn't interrupt. I'm not saying I'm into you, he said at last. I'm not saying I'm not. I'm saying, I don't know, but I want to understand. I want to know what it means to feel what you feel. Not just for curiosity. For real. I swallowed hard. That's a big thing to say, I replied. I know. And what if the answer isn't what you hope? Then I'll know, he said, and you'll know I tried. I nodded. Trying matters. We sat there for a long time after that. No fireworks. No sudden clarity. Just two people sharing a moment that neither of us knew how to define. He asked if we could just hang out more, quietly, without pressure. I said yes. He asked if I was okay with questions, even the awkward ones. I said yes again. We talked about nothing for a while after that. Movies, food, music, but beneath it all was something new. Not romantic, not yet. Not even close, but honest. And that felt like more than enough. We didn't plan to walk home together that night. It just happened. We'd stayed out too long, sitting on that bench, letting time slip past us while we talked around what we didn't know how to name. There was comfort in the not knowing. It gave us room to exist without pressure, without answers. But eventually, the air cooled and the streetlights buzzed on. So we got up and headed home, side by side, steps in rhythm without trying. It was like muscle memory, like we'd done it 1,000 times before. The neighborhood was quiet. Just a few porch lights and the sound of someone's TV humming through a window. We didn't say much. I think we were both content just being near each other, letting the silence hold what we weren't ready to say. When we turned onto a street, I saw the porch light was still on. I should have noticed the shadow behind the screen door. Should have realized that the way Liam slowed down meant something more than just exhaustion. But I didn't. Not until we were halfway up the walkway and the door creaked open. His father stood there, backlit, silent. He didn't speak. Not a word. Just looked. I felt Liam freeze beside me. Not visibly. Not with drama. But his body changed, his posture, his breath. I felt the tension coil in the air like static. I tried to nod, to acknowledge the man I'd known for years as Mr. Carter. The man who always said hello, who'd coached our middle school soccer team, who'd grilled burgers in the summer while we ran barefoot through sprinklers. But this time, he didn't nod back. He just looked at us and kept looking. There was something in that gaze, heavy, sharp, unreadable. It wasn't shock. It wasn't anger. It was silence that pressed like weight. A silence that said more than shouting ever could. I wanted to move, to step back, to disappear, but I didn't. Liam's voice was quiet. I'll text you, he said. I nodded, not trusting my own voice. He didn't look at me again as he stepped onto the porch. The door closed behind him with a softness that still echoed. I walked home alone. Every step felt off balance. When I got to my room, I sat by the window and stared into the night. No messages came. Not that night. Not the next. Not the one after that. Each day stretched wider. The silence between us growing heavier. I tried to convince myself it was fine. That he needed space. That we weren't back to square one. But it felt worse than that. It felt like I'd lost him. And I hated that I didn't even know why. I replayed everything over and over. Our conversation in the park, the slow walk home, the door opening. I tried to find the exact moment it changed. Try to understand if it was something I did or just the way his father looked at us. The absence of words made it worse. No confrontation, no fight, just disappearance. On the third night, I gave up trying to distract myself. I sat on my bed, lights off, room quiet, watching the shadows shift across the ceiling. And then, at almost midnight, a soft tap on my window. It was so faint I thought I imagined it. until I heard it again. I pulled back the curtain. Liam, hood pulled up, face pale in the glow of the streetlight, hands clenched at his sides. I opened the window without a word. He climbed in like he'd done 100 times before, but this time he didn't say anything right away. He sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. I waited. Then, his voice, barely above a whisper. I didn't run away. I didn't move. I was just scared. Still, I stayed quiet. Let him speak. He took a breath. That night, when we got back, he didn't say anything. Not then. Just looked at me. And I knew. Knew what? I asked. That he knew. Everything. Or enough. I don't know. But the way he looked at me. I've never seen him like that. I swallowed hard. Did he say something later? Liam nodded. The next morning, he asked me if there was something I needed to tell him. And you said? I told him I didn't know. His hands were shaking. Not dramatically. Just enough. He said people like that don't know what they're doing. That it's confusion. A phase. That it passes. I didn't speak. He said you were probably just messing with my head. That hurt. But I didn't flinch. Liam looked at me then. Eyes raw, voice unsteady. But I told him no. I told him it wasn't like that. That you weren't messing with me. That you never pressured me. That, if anything, I came to you. A pause. And he told me to stay away from you. I felt the sting in my chest. Liam continued. He said if I kept hanging around, it'd only make things worse. What did you say? I asked. I didn't answer. I left. Took a walk. Then another. Spent the next 2 days trying to figure out what I wanted. And did you? He nodded. I want this, he said. Not labels. Not answers. Just us. I want to be able to sit with you and not feel ashamed. I want to figure things out without feeling like I'm doing something wrong. You're not, I said. He looked at me. I know that now. But it took time. Another silence. Softer this time. I was scared, he repeated. But now, I'm more scared of losing you than I am of disappointing him. That broke something open in me. Not pain. Something else. Relief. Hope. I reached out and took his hand. He let me. And we sat there, in the quiet, holding something fragile between us. Something we didn't need to name. Not yet. Things didn't suddenly become simple. There was no switch flipped, no bright light of certainty. What happened between us after that night wasn't a declaration or a resolution. It was a decision made quietly, again and again. To keep showing up. To stay present. To allow each other the space to figure out what this was, whatever name it eventually might or might not have. We never called it love. Not out loud. Not even in passing. There were no romantic confessions, no cinematic moments. But what we had was steady. Real. Built in pauses and glances, long walks, silent car rides, text messages that didn't try too hard but still said enough. Every time he reached out, it meant something. Every time I replied, it meant something too. Liam didn't pull away anymore. Not physically, not emotionally. He stopped hesitating when we made plans. He stopped looking over his shoulder when we talked in public. He never told anyone, but he didn't act like he was hiding either. Maybe that was his version of honesty. We still hung out like we used to, at the park, by the water, in the quiet corners of the world we used to own. But now, the spaces between our words held more. He was still figuring himself out. I could see it in the way he asked questions. Not about identity, but about feeling. Connection. Trust. Some nights he'd message me something small, about a movie, a meme, a moment, and end it with something that made my chest tighten, like wish you were here, or felt weird not talking to you today. I never made a big deal out of it. I didn't want to scare him off or make him feel like I was waiting for more than he could give. But those messages were enough. More than enough. He came over a lot. Sometimes just to sit beside me on the porch. Sometimes to talk about his day like nothing had changed. And sometimes, when neither of us spoke, he'd rest his shoulder against mine and just breathe. That kind of closeness used to terrify me because I knew what it meant to me and I didn't know what it meant to him. But now, I let it happen without question. If he was choosing to be there, I could choose to trust it. There were still moments of doubt. Times when he'd go quiet mid-sentence. Or when he'd start to say something and stop, like he was afraid of what the words might mean. I didn't push. I let him have his space. And slowly, he began filling it on his own. He told me one night that he had a dream where we were older, living in a city where no one knew us. Where it didn't matter who we were to anyone but ourselves. He said he didn't know why he had that dream or what it meant, but it made him feel calm when he woke up. I didn't say anything then, just smiled and told him I liked that dream. He didn't use terms like boyfriend. I never asked him to. We didn't define things because the act of naming it didn't feel necessary. What mattered more was what we did, how we treated each other, how we showed up, how we held space for the fear and the hope at the same time. His dad never brought it up again. The distance between them stayed, and I could tell it wore on Liam. There were days when his smile didn't reach as far, when his words felt heavier. But he never let it close him off completely. If anything, it made him come closer to me. And every time he did, I reminded myself that this choice to be near, to be open, was more than I'd ever expected. We never talked about a future, not in the way couples might. But we talked about tomorrow, about what we'd do after school, what we might study, where we might travel. He said he wanted to see the ocean at night. I said I'd take him. Sometimes he'd ask me what I thought people would say if they found out. I'd shrug and say I didn't care. He'd smile and say, I wish I was more like you. And I'd tell him, you're more like you than you think. It wasn't a story of confession and falling headfirst into a label. It was a story of choosing, not once but every day. Choosing to stay, to talk, to sit through the discomfort, to let go of old versions of ourselves and build something quiet and new. We never kissed. Not then. Not because we didn't want to, but because we didn't need to. That kind of moment was too big, and we weren't trying to prove anything. What we had was in the way he waited for me outside school without asking. In the way I saved him the last bite of anything sweet. In the way he laughed softer when we were alone. We weren't perfect. Sometimes we snapped at each other for no reason. Sometimes the pressure of what wasn't said sat between us like fog. But we always came back. Always chose to keep trying. I remember one night when we sat in my backyard under the stars. He was stretched out on the grass, arms behind his head. I was beside him, staring at the sky. He turned to me and said, I don't know what we are. I said, we don't have to know. He nodded, but I'm glad it's us. And I was too. We didn't need answers. We needed time. We needed trust. We needed each other. Even if the world wasn't ready, we were ready to understand.